All right, this is exciting, isn't it?
Here we go, guys, in 5, 4, 3.
Here we go.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for good programming, and I appreciate the content and really enjoyed every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station, and it's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hello, how are ya? Did you have a good weekend? Gosh, I hope so. Because it's going to go all downhill, starting with today. So, let's see. Where do we begin? Let's start with Iran. You know, Donald Trump and our Omani negotiators and everybody, when they first sat down, they set this arbitrary 60-day limit. 60 days, there was going to be a deal. Well, it's 60 days today. And the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and there is no deal. So Donald Trump is angry. Who is he angry at? Is he lashing out at Iran? Is he lashing out at his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, or his real estate friend, Steve Witkoff? Is he lashing out on any of the people he is responsible for? No. I think you knew this was coming. No, he is not. Who's he lashing out at? Oman. Oman. The country that agreed to be the mediator in this deal. It's apparently their fault. You know, they're supposed to be mediating. Well, what does that mean? They're not mediating thoroughly enough. They're not mediating fast enough. Yes, we should all be angry with Oman today because it is, I mean, it's obvious everything is Oman's fault, right? I mean, come on. They're the mediators. Isn't it their job to get this done? So it's not the fact that Trump has no idea how to bring this conflict to a close. It has nothing to do with the fact that Iran feels that they are in such a position of power. At first, they were saying, you know what? We don't feel that there's any need to really negotiate till after the midterms. That's what they were saying. Now, there are reports that the Iranians have changed that message, that, you know what, now that they really think about it, maybe they're not going to negotiate with us until 2029, till after the presidential election, and they can sit down with a new president. So the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and no matter how many times Donald Trump declares it open, it ain't open. It ain't open. And we can't make it be open. Not only, when I said he was lashing out at Oman, he's not just lashing out with words, he's lashing out with threats. Oh God help us, he is threatening to bomb Oman. Yep, you heard that right. You heard that right. Oh my God. I'm sorry. For those of you who voted for Trump, or if you know somebody who voted for Trump, I don't care if they're experiencing buyer's remorse. They knew this guy was in office for 4 years and he lied like a rug. And the only reason he didn't do more damage in those first 4 years is because he knew he didn't know anything about government. So for various positions, chief of staff, Department of Defense, he actually brought on people with experience. And those people with experience, A, were willing to tell him no. And when he went off the rails, they had ways of slowing down or even stopping his worst impulses. He learned that lesson. And that's why he only put toadies in place, because he doesn't want anybody to tell him no. I saw an interview, Jonathan Swan and Maggie Haberman from the New York Times published that book, Regime Change. They said that they got an appointment to sit down with Donald Trump, and it was made clear that that meeting was simply to fact check before, they sent the final edition of the book to print. And Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan said Trump handed them a list. He said, a historian made this list and said, I'm the most powerful of all of them. And on that list were like Stalin and Hitler, all these dictators. Yeah, I'm more powerful than all of them. And Jonathan Swan explained he doesn't care about the United States. He doesn't care if gas is high or your groceries cost a lot of money. He wants to be a big guy internationally. That's probably why it was so easy for Bibi Netanyahu to convince him to bomb Iran, because he wants to be the biggest, baddest leader that's ever been on the planet. And oh, by the way, the historian who made that list, not an actual historian, a layperson who is, by their description, a history buff. And the guy used to be the golf caddy for Gary Player. Yeah, he's a history buff. And, he volunteered to caddy for Gary Player, thought that would be cool. And he's the one that gave Trump the piece of paper that said he was more powerful than all these previous guys. Gary Player's golf caddy. But, reporting again today, I believe the national average for a gallon of gas is now $4.06. So, yeah, there's that. But, at least we know that Jared Kushner is going to solve the problem of Gaza. Did you know that? Did you know that? You know how Benjamin Netanyahu has decided Trump is not an ally anymore. He's back to his useful idiot status. So with this board of, what was it, the International Board of Peace or something that Trump formed, Netanyahu looked at their quote-unquote peace deal and was like, no, we're not doing that, and you can't make us. So Jared Kushner flew to Israel to meet with Netanyahu because the president's son-in-law, who runs a private investment fund that by all accounts is making very little money, though apparently the fees to be in that fund are hundreds of millions of dollars that he and Ivanka are raking in. He went to Israel to talk to Netanyahu to try to get him to come to an agreement over Gaza. Yeah. Doesn't that make you feel safe and better knowing that Jared's on the case? And we were supposed to do some military exercises with South Korea. The plan has been on the books for quite a while. And Donald Trump has decided that he can't decide. We're either going to just not do it at all or we're going to scale it way back. And why would we do that when especially Asia is potentially in a dicey position too? Why? Because he wants everybody to know that Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, they're buds. Come on. Trump gets along with him really well, so he doesn't want to make the North Korean leader mad. He doesn't want to make him angry by doing these military exercises with South Korea. Remember how he said he got like a love letter. I know, it just makes your skin crawl. How he said he got a love letter from Kim Jong-un because, and by the way, again, feeding into this thing that Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Snow said about how he doesn't care about being the leader of the United States. He wants to be a big-time world leader, big-time world influencer, big-time world power. So, of course, he cares more about what's going on with North Korea than he cares what's going on with your gas prices. Silly goose. Of course. Was there ever any doubt? His ego has really made him absolutely blind to reality. We're going to bomb Oman because as our mediators, it's their responsibility to make a deal. And they didn't do it. It's not our fault. It's not the fact that Iran told Donald Trump to go pound sand. No, it is those pesky Omanis. Yeah. One little bit of good news to share with you this Monday. Donald Trump keeps going back to the Supreme Court to try to get them to somehow negate the payment he had to make and has already made to E. Jean Carroll. He keeps trying to find new legal language or some sort of workarounds. Well, the Supreme Court has rejected his latest effort. This judgment was announced today, but unusually, it didn't include any reasons why. So, nobody apparently wants to take credit for it. Nobody wants to take credit for dissenting. Everybody just wants it to go away. So, yeah, I believe it was $5 million to start with, and then I think it was $580,000 by the time she finally got the money, because the only reason that the judge let the case go on was Trump had to put, once he was found to owe her that money, he had to put it in escrow. He had to pay that money, and they put it in an account, and then they let him continue. And when he exhausted all of his appeals, they gave E. Jean Carroll the money. But Trump has decided that's not good enough. He wants to get that money back. It kills him that she got that money. This is kind of, you may not have seen this story. It wasn't national or international news. In Canada, they have started a petition to get the Parliament there to debate whether or not our ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, should be declared persona non grata and kicked out of the country. From what I read, a petition like that to have the Parliament debate something, I believe it requires 500 signatures. As of yesterday, the petition to have the Canadian Parliament hold discussions about basically kicking our ambassador out of the country had 170,000 signatures. 170,000 signatures of people who say that Pete Hoekstra has done nothing but insult them and disparage them since he has been here. And they don't need that. They don't want that. So it will now be a subject for discussion. Todd Maffin, who you may remember I interviewed quite a while ago, he posts amazing things. He's one of the people who started one of the big efforts. If you're like a medical worker, everybody always needs more medical workers. And so he created a path where if you were a doctor or a nurse or some other medical professional and you wanted to know about moving to Canada, he did all the work and created a website that later was expanded to other people who wanted to move to Canada. And what he created has been adopted by not just his own hometown of Nanaimo, but several communities across Canada now have adopted that web format so that people who Canada would love to have can find out how to become Canadian and get accepted. Todd Maffin also posts about buying Canadian. He's posts about history. It's really, he's really a very bright, very sarcastic, very amusing, very intelligent man. And I believe he might have been the first one to refer to the Canadian ambassador, Pete Hoekstra, as a chucklehead. Chucklehead Hoekstra, that's what they call him now. And it appears to be a name that has stuck. Chucklehead Hoekstra. It is, if you want to find out about the stupid things Hoekstra has said and done, yeah, you can just go through all of Todd Maffin's reporting for the last 6 months. The word tone deaf doesn't begin to describe Hoekstra. Doesn't begin to describe. And he was like, he's not apologizing for any of it. He's like, well, why wouldn't I, talk about what Donald Trump wants? Why wouldn't I, talk about his desire to make Canada the 51st state? Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I? Well, the fact that you're a diplomat, we send ambassadors to other countries. If you are an ambassador, then by definition, you are our representative, the U.S. representative in another country. And that's, Mr. Hoekstra, what Canada is. It's another country. It is not, in any way, shape, or form, a candidate to be the 51st state. And boy, do they get ticked off. Rightly so. That Donald Trump keeps revisiting this. I don't blame them, not one little tiny bit. Oh, and this is somewhat related. It's in the same vein of ticking off our allies. If they keep breaking stories, I'm going to have to resubscribe to the Washington Post, though. And I know that's not really where Jeff Bezos makes his money, but he has so bastardized that paper. There was more breaking news in the Washington Post that several of our allies have been meeting privately, Middle Eastern allies, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain. They have been meeting to discuss the fact that they are all aggravated with Trump. They are all aggravated with Trump, and they are sharing that aggravation with one another. The Washington Post is also reporting that as part of these talks, there has been the beginning of a debate about whether or not they should continue to allow American military bases on their land. The deal when we wanted those bases there because if we ever have to really fight with anybody, just like it's very difficult for Iran to hit us. You know, we have to travel a long way if we're really going to go to war with someone, and having those bases there was always a reminder to the world that we had a presence there. We had a solid presence there. Don't mess with us. Don't mess with any of the people we like, because we're right here. We're right here in your backyard. And if you don't behave, well, then you're going to pay the price. Except that the Iran war has shown Donald Trump to be utterly incompetent, a paper tiger. He doesn't know how to get out of this conflict. He really doesn't have a clue. You've heard about the horrible conditions on the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. Donald Trump has said it's not true. Pete Hegseth says it's not true. But more and more and more family members are starting to talk to independent journalists and describe the conditions, and it's harrowing. Well, apparently there's a destroyer, because our military is so well maintained, and Pete Hegseth is so on top of this. There was a destroyer, USS Benfold, that was in the South China Sea. And it had what they describe as an engineering casualty, and power went out on the ship. No cooking, no air conditioning, no power for the ship. That means the ship will be drifting. No engines. And this is the South China Sea, which regularly, especially in the summer, is like 100 degrees. I saw an interview with a military guy who was once on a ship that lost power for 4 hours in the waters off Puerto Rico. He said it was the most miserable 4 hours of his life, that the heat was unbearable. You know, there was no clean water. The ship was drifting. That was 4 hours. This was 4 days. But Pete Hegseth, man, he's doing a great job. He's doing a great job of sucking up to Donald Trump. Hey, big guy, hey, let's go have a brewski. Donald Trump doesn't drink. Who knows about Pete Hegseth? Okay. All righty. 773-763-9278. 773-763 WCPT. If you are interested in being a first-time caller or a first-time texter, would like to get your take on the news of the day. As a matter of fact, we are going to leave those phone lines and text lines open for much of the day, because we're going to do something a little bit different today. You know, Chris Bury retired as the journalist in residence at DePaul. And I thought to myself, well, you know what? Whenever I've had him on the radio, it always seems like we never have enough time. So today, Chris Bury and I are going to talk about the news of the day. We've put together like 10 different things. We'll never get to all of it. And he's going to be here from 3 to 5. At 4 o'clock, we are going to, the both of us are going to talk to Mike Quigley. So that'll be interesting. We're going to talk to him about his mayoral campaign. And then we're going to talk about all the news that's fit to print. So let's take a break and get started right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We are reading your texts and taking your calls. Somebody sent me a graphic from the Mirror, which is rowdy paper in the United Kingdom. And there's a headline: Mitch McConnell absolutely refuses to film video as health fears spiral. Governor Andy Beshear said the Republican senator failed to respond to multiple attempts to get in contact with his decades-old pal amid mounting concerns about his health. So it continues. So the Republicans in the Senate down a vote, down Mitch McConnell's vote for as long as he stays away. Somebody else texted in. So the liar in chief is actually quoted as saying that we will have to pay a teeny tiny bit more for gas at a rally in New York. Numbers don't lie. 30% more is not tiny. He has no empathy since he made billions in the last 2 years grifting at our expense. Meanwhile, the Epstein class is protected and the credible teenager's accusations of sexual assault stonewalled as with the ongoing redactions. Yep. That's going to be something that's got to be very high on the list when the Democrats take back the House after the midterm elections, after we fight off Trump's efforts to say that there was interference in the elections and he has to, seize everything. No, 1,000 times no. It's simply a question of, oh my goodness, you lost. And let's hope that going after the Epstein pages, documents, and, originally there were photographs and there were videos. When the FBI broke open Epstein's safe at his Manhattan townhouse, they took documents, they took CDs, and they took hard drives or thumb drives. So, yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff. But, the texter makes a good point. Do we really need to see all that and read all that? Because you know what? We have testimony from the people who were there. We have testimony from the victims. But we won't really believe them, until we get the documents. If Epstein says it's true on paper, well, then it must be true, right? Thank you for that text. And somebody also texted in, rich, male, white, murder, rape, espionage. We don't even ask them to behave. I can't find this right now, but somebody texted in what I was reporting about the USS Benfold. It was only without power for 4 days. Only without power for 4 days, drifting in the South China Sea, where there was, because there was no power, there was no clean water, there was no cooking, there was no air conditioning. 4 days. I mean, come on, Joan. And then it was towed and then it was repaired. Yes, those things are both true. That's how we know it was only 4 days, because you see, if it was still out there, we would say it was ongoing. But it happened for 4 days. And if you think, like I said, there was a high-ranking guy who said he was on a ship that lost power in the water off Puerto Rico for 4 hours, and he said it was almost unbearable. So, yeah, 4 days is a big deal. And, yes, they towed it in, and, yes, they worked on fixing it. That doesn't mean that it wasn't a big deal. And we've now had 2 ships that have apparently were and have been, and perhaps there are more that are currently being neglected. By the way, that Benford, that was part of the George Washington strike group. The USS George Washington, which is supposed to be replacing the USS Abraham Lincoln. And the last I read, the Benford was not going to be with them. They wasn't quite up to snuff yet. Okay. Before I thank you, thank you for the compliments. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Jim, who's on the line from Chicago.
Hi, Joan. The sins of omission on these morning shows on Sunday, political shows, are so numerous I can't even count them. I can't watch it anymore. I would love to see a Republican politician get on and explain Project 2025. How's it working out for the constituents? How long is it going to last? And how many? I imagine 60% has already been implemented. But let's get on to that case. The second one is, do you think the Trump family's been satiated enough with enough money, or do you think that he deserves more? And the third would be this war. Get down to brass tacks. What happened? Why are we there? Why are we, like Randy Manor said, why make the world a tinderbox? I mean, what is that about? These are the questions I want to hear. Not this nonsense that they put on TV in the morning. I don't know what these people are being paid, Joan. I don't know what they're doing. But, my God, I've never seen it's become unwatchable. I'd rather watch The Lone Ranger. I switch to The Lone Ranger as soon as they come on.
Oh, the original one with Clayton Moore?
Yeah. He's got a double, too. He's got another guy who is more soft-spoken than he is when they got the mask on. But the point is, I can't watch it anymore. It's become so preposterous that nobody gets a germane question and nobody gets anything, the nuts and bolts of anything anymore. And then this nonsense about the Democratic Party's falling apart because of socialism, which is just insane because of the fact we've had socialist mayors, and 60 years ago in Milwaukee was a socialist mayor. Eugene Debs ran on a socialist ticket. I mean, come on, these people can't be that ignorant of history.
Yeah.
And the point is, but the point is that it's just. I don't know if they're being pressured by, just money is just destroying all communications on Earth, or what is going on. But I can't watch it anymore, Joan. And I'm looking forward to you and Mr. Fleury later on today. And thank you, Joan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. That's very kind of you to say. And I do agree with you that some of the, this is terrible for somebody that came from my background to say, but I quit watching television for the most part when I left television, and that is more common than you know. It's like those of us who were steeped in it for so long, by the time we walk away from it, man, we are just done. Done. So, I get you. I hear you. And by the way, thank you for the texter. Let's see if I can find it again. Joan, in my opinion, some of your best shows are when you have a guest for an hour or more. Very unusual on the radio. And then you can go in tangents, which are fun to hear. Thank you. That is exactly why I've started doing this a little bit more. Because, as they say, that gives the show time to breathe. You don't always feel like you're rushing to make sure you get to this point and that point and this point because you don't have much time, and then it's goodbye, and then it's on to the next guest. When you take the pace a little slower, you're absolutely right. Stuff comes up, and you think about stuff, and you talk about stuff that you might not otherwise have done. And I think that that's a big plus, and I really appreciate you saying that. We've got more calls and more texts, but you know what? Let's take a break, and we'll be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
773-763-9278. And as I said, Chris Bury is going to be joining me from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We are going to, at 4 o'clock, we're going to briefly speak with Mike Quigley, Illinois congressman, about, oh my God, so much going on in Congress. And we are going to keep the phone lines open, and I am going to make sure that I continue to pay attention to the text line. So it is a Lollapalooza today with no music. Let's go back to the phone lines. Dave's on the line from Hoffman Estates. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Joan. Yeah, that where Trump ordering the cuts in the South Korea drills. Like, I don't know if you caught the show previous. I was telling Tom that I had been on one of those like some 47 years ago, but where we worked hand in hand with our South Korean allies.
Yeah.
And so we knew, whatever they knew our system and that, and it helped their economy when we went over there and all of that. It was just to show that they could count on us, and stuff like that. And well, I'm saying, I'm talking 47 years ago too. So.
Yeah.
But and now he's pouting because South Korea told him no, they wouldn't go join up with that Iran war.
Yeah.
So it's part of the thing. And I seen last week where the South Korean president kind of made an overture to Kim. It was on that their liberation day from when they liberated from Japan, and Kim still hasn't followed it, but he wanted to have a face to face and get peaceful existence. He said, and let's end this war. But Kim hasn't answered yet, and because in the past he's been wanting to totally occupy or recapturing and incorporating the South into its territory,
Yep.
So,
And one little tangent to all this, you're right. You're absolutely right. South Korea put his nose out of joint because they wouldn't join in the war on Iran. North Korea, though, is, by many reports, supplying munitions to Russia to use against Ukraine. They have sent, in the first batch, they sent 50,000 troops to help fight in Ukraine. And the reporting I saw said that there is another large group of troops getting ready to go over again. So, that's our buddy. That's our pal. He's in love with Donald Trump.
Kind of like the Japanese in World War II, that they didn't want to be surrendered. That they said some of them have gotten killed, screeching out Kim's name before they got killed and stuff like that. But even like last year, North Korea's been working with ICBMs and stuff like that, and they've been firing off the east coast of theirs, and they're getting them. They had Russia helping them with better engines, solid fuel engines and stuff like that they can reach California and stuff. And like right now, they got these other ones that ain't ICBMs. They've already threatened Seoul that they could take out their capital and stuff like that. So he's not a good actor. But hey, Joe, before I close off, when you're gonna have Quigley on, Mike Quigley. Do me a favor. As you know, I brought up before about this Congressional Gold Medal to the World War II nurses. Ask him why he's not signed as a co-sponsor.
Okay.
There's only two representatives from Illinois. One is Representative Lauren Underwood, and the other is Representative John Chakowski.
Huh. I don't suppose, he may know of this, but do you have like a number for it, a House bill or Senate bill number?
Sure. Also, HR 4901. And it's
I will ask him.
Thank you. I would appreciate it because my boy, Christian Orthy, he ain't signed it. Of course, he's let me down before, so I just figure as soon as he gets done with being the congressman, he's going to be a lobbyist for somebody like Palantir, and Senator Duckworth on the Senate side, she's never signed, and I was really aghast at somebody who had nurses and doctors working on her in the war zone. If you ever get a chance, just read up what these World War II nurses had to go up to, because they've given...
I will definitely do that.
Gold medals for, the Rosie the Riveters. It's just they deserve them. And then the female air pilots. And these women,
most of the women who served in World War II have had to, because I've read a bunch of books about them, and they've had to struggle for any recognition. There were some women in France who were helping with the war effort, and the men who did the same job were all given honors and medals. The women were not even named. They were not even named, like they didn't exist.
That's why, get on him and ask him why. Because they need a few of them. And these ladies, they ain't getting no younger.
Yeah, really.
And it's a sensitive spot for me.
Yeah.
I was attached with medics, but I wasn't a medic. So I know what they do and what they've done. And just reading up. If you get a chance, read that up. It just makes you upset,
Yeah, it really does. And the same thing happened in World War I. It was like women didn't exist. And then all of a sudden, 40 years later, they're writing all these books about the amazing things that women did back as far as World War I.
Right.
Yeah.
And in D.C., they got a monument to the Vietnam nurses. I mean, they need to do something for these people, too, these women.
Yeah.
Because they came home and they just picked up their life and went on, and they didn't, make a big thing about it. But I mean, they deserve it. There's not that many left. So anyway, let me get off. So, but
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Jim, if you're still listening, somebody texted in. I don't know how Jim's been watching the Sunday shows over the past decade. He really outlasted most decent folks. So everyone feels your pain, Jim. They feel your pain. Let's go back to the phone lines. Ron's on the line from Chicago. Hello, Ron.
Hello. So when is Trump going to, when's he going to start building hotels and casinos in North Korea?
You know what? You wouldn't surprise me to find out that in their private conversations, he has brought it up.
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
No,
Maybe he'll send Jared Kushner over there to do a real estate deal.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't that be great if Kim Jong-un just decided to make Jared a permanent resident?
Why not? And Tom Blanche said over the weekend that Trump never asked him to do anything illegal and never asked him to do anything.
Oh, I know. I mean, does he? Who does he think believes that? I mean, seriously. Todd Blanche, it's like he wants his cake. He wants to be considered a respectable head of the DOJ. He wants people's admiration and respect. But by the same token, he doesn't really want to stop lying for Donald Trump and doing his bidding. So he's really he's poor Todd. He's in such a quandary.
And right after he said that, he went to a party with Trump and other Republicans. So there you go.
Yeah, that's that nonpartisan head of the DOJ role, man. Nonpartisan.
And also, there's a website now on the internet for it's a support group for former MAGA members. So that's helpful.
Are you talking about Leaving MAGA?
Yeah,
Rich Logis. Yeah, we've had him on a couple of times. And he's talked about it. And his Leaving MAGA group. He started he talked about it on social media. He started a group on the web. He's written a book, and he talks about it a lot, about how hard it was, what it was that finally got him. And I've heard people describe it as once there's one thing, because with MAGA you have to be all in. If you have doubts about anything or any issue, you're kicked out of the group. You're no longer a part of the tribe. So even the stuff that doesn't make sense, you have to buy into. And he said, he described it as threads. He said, when the first thing happens or that you experience or that you read about that doesn't make sense to you and doesn't seem right, he describes that as the first thread. And he says, once you pull the first thread, eventually all the threads will come loose.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thank you much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. We were, as you might have heard, Jim was talking about how he can't stand to watch television anymore. And somebody texted in, people quit watching television with the explosion of the internet and all the web stations and web programs and YouTube, etc. Yeah. That's very true. Though some of us, and I happen to be speaking about myself, some of us have been very, very, very late to that party. That we haven't exactly been, going to the web. Oh, I think I need news. Let me go to, I don't know, Reddit, YouTube, YouTube Shorts. And I do get it. There's a whole lot of folks who are of voting age who don't watch television. They don't listen to the radio. And a lot of them anymore don't even do a lot of social media. Both of my kids, they made social media accounts when they were in high school and pretty much haven't touched them since. So, there might be an Instagram account somewhere or a TikTok account, but they literally don't do anything with them. They just sit there. And my daughter's 28. And as I might have mentioned, when she was, I think, 12, she told me that Facebook was for old people. So, yeah. So there. Because, we did take it over. I mean, it might have started with college kids, but people of my demographic realized that it was a great way to stay in touch with like family members who live far away, or friends or people you went to college or high school with or grade school with, that it was a really nice way to be connected to people with whom you could not be physically connected. So yeah, we took to it. And we're not apologizing. We took it over. But for those of us who pay attention and read about longevity, the single factor that predicts who will live the longest, healthiest lives over multiple studies, over decades with tens of thousands of people, social connection. That is the single biggest predictor of whether you will live long and live a long, healthy life. And I'm not talking about just, your immediate family. I'm talking about friends. I'm talking about colleagues. The people who had the most social interaction were the people who lived the longest and were the healthiest. So that's why we took over Facebook. Somebody texted in along these lines. Young Dems, no doubt young Dems aren't listening to WCPT as evidenced by the geezers calling in, LOL. They're probably all in with DSA. The DSA is, of course, the Democratic Socialists of America. Saw an interview on CNN earlier. Republicans are going to try to say that the Democratic Party has become too progressive. Though when you look, there's a handful of progressives that got voted in, but their candidacies and their elections were covered widely. But the Democratic Socialists of America have like a list of all the things that they believe in. And, I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal, but if you looked up in Wikipedia of all the things that you have to believe to be a Democrat or a liberal, I probably don't tick all those boxes, which is why I have said repeatedly that rather than labeling someone and assuming that they follow the Wikipedia definition of that term, ask them. Ask them what they believe in. Ask them, do you support a single-payer health insurance or making health insurance companies, medical insurance companies, nonprofits? Do you support Medicare for all? Where do you stand on efforts to guarantee health care to people who aren't rich and who aren't in politics, because they get really good health care too? We have now seen, for a while, medical bankruptcies in this country, those figures were coming down. We had the ACA, there were subsidies, people could afford insurance. Those subsidies are disappearing. And if you don't have employer insurance, it can be wildly expensive, prohibitively expensive to try to buy it on your own. So we have more and more people going without, and we are going to have more and more and more medical bankruptcies. We're like the only country in the developed world where people lose their livelihoods, their lives, due to medical expenses, bankrupting them. Other countries can't even wrap their head around the fact that that's a thing here. I can't either. We are going to take a break. We are going to bring in Chris Bury, and feel free to keep texting and phoning, and we are going to talk about all kinds of stuff when we come right back after this.
Your next night out is at Paramount Theater in downtown Aurora, packed with laughs, memorable music, and so much pink. Paramount's production of Mean Girls is the must-see musical event of the season. From August 26th through October 11th, experience the hit Broadway musical based on Tina Fey's iconic film. Mean Girls is a hilarious musical with heart, telling the story of Katie Heron, a sweet and smart new girl who's just moved from Africa to suburban Illinois. When she enters the wild world of North Shore High, she quickly finds herself tangled up with the Plastics, the school's most popular and most ruthless clique, led by Queen Bee Regina George. Perfect for anyone who's ever tried to find their place in the crowd, Paramount's production of Mean Girls is bold, dazzling, and larger than life. Get your tickets now at ParamountAurora.com. On Wednesdays, we wear pink. Every other day, we go see this show.
Homeowners, is your upper floor too hot in the summer? Are energy bills climbing with every degree? Green Attic can help. With over 15 years of experience and more than 1,000 five-star reviews, Green Attic is a trusted name in Chicagoland for insulation, ventilation, and roofing solutions that make homes more comfortable and energy efficient. They specialize in attic insulation, spray foam, crawl space encapsulation, mold remediation, and solar attic fan installation, all designed to keep your home cooler and improve indoor air quality during the warmer months. Green Attic also offers full-service roofing through Green Attic Roofing, from roof repairs and replacements to flat roofs, commercial roofing, and solar panel installation. The right insulation and ventilation can lower energy use, reduce strain on your HVAC system, and help maintain more consistent temperatures throughout your home. Green Attic backs its work with the industry's only 10-year labor warranty. Schedule your free insulation consultation at greenattic.com or get an instant roofing estimate at greenatticroofing.com. Green Attic, healthy home, happy family.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm chatting with Chris Bury. We have done our best to get the audio fixed up. I asked Chris to weigh in on an opinion piece that Peggy Noonan posted in the Wall Street Journal. Here's a little bit about what she wrote. Regular people are watching all this, which is like Iran and all that other stuff, are watching all this peripherally, as regular people do. Would they be thinking, is this new forever war? Are we running out of bullets? Endless talks, nothing settled, gasoline prices up if things drag on? It's more than this is what he said he wouldn't do. Mr. Trump's supporters have always enjoyed his air of certainty. Nothing is that complicated. His common sense will rout the deep state swamp creatures. Now he looks as if he doesn't know what his next move is. He's uncertain. He doesn't look competent. I just couldn't believe this, especially in the Wall Street Journal, which has a tendency of treating the Trump administration with kid gloves.
Except for tariffs.
Yeah, really.
The one thing the Wall Street Journal has really cared about, because obviously it hurt the profits of the companies that it represents in its editorial pages. But no, I think Peggy Noonan is onto something. And I know the audio was kind of faltering last bit, but the polls certainly bear that out. Even among Republicans in the latest Fox News and Reuters polls, both, even among Republicans, Trump's support is dropping. It's still strong there, but it's below 40% for the American people. And certainly the Iran war has been emblematic of the chaos and the confusion. I mean, this is a war started in late February for which the president did not lay out any kind of strategic rationale to the American people, let alone Congress. They just started bombing, Iran on February 28th. And there have been so many false starts in so many statements, the war is over. We defeated them militarily. They don't have a navy. We wiped out their leadership. We've already done regime change. Well, that kind of buffalo and bluster will work for a while, but at some point it stops working. It just stops working.
Somebody, I don't know if this number is accurate, but I read somebody say that more than 100 times he's basically said the war is over.
At some point, people either stop listening or they tune it out, or they say, wake me up when the war is over.
Amen.
But every day, they drive past the local, Exxon or Citgo station or whatever it is, and they see the price of gas somewhere hovering around $4 or more. And so it becomes a very visual reminder of the fact that the war isn't over. And if they do turn on the news, they realize that we are lurching from announcements of peace deals to resumption of attacks to, we're going to bomb them into the Stone Age. And I think it's disconcerting for, everyday Americans who don't really know what's going on in Iran. And the words of the administration are increasingly difficult to swallow.
I would say that pretty much all of us, there's not just like one segment who doesn't know what's going on in Iran. I mean, months ago, when I would start the show, that's the one thing that I would update off the top. And I started saying to the listeners, choose your adventure. Here's what the Guardian says. Here's what the New York Times says. Here's what the Wall Street Journal says. Here's what Iranian media is reporting. So pick your choice, because it was all different all the time. And, while none of them were 100% credible, Chris, there were a few weeks when I felt that what was coming out of Iran was more credible than what was coming out of the White House.
No, I agree with you. And today is an important day, or at least it should be, on paper, because today is the official expiration of the Memorandum of Understanding, which President Trump signed with great, fanfare at the Palace in Versailles, France. And, this was going to be the peace deal, and we were going to open the strait. And after that, we were going to resolve the nuclear issue. Well, none of that has occurred. Absolutely none of it. Iran remains in complete control of the strait. And yes, we have a naval blockade, which is preventing, material from getting into Iran. But the Iranian leadership seems to be willing to wait it out. I mean, the Wall Street Journal has a very strong story today saying that the hardliners in Iran have essentially won and that they are going to be aggressive. And they certainly, can follow the American political calendar, too. I mean, They did this brilliantly back in the hostage crisis in 1979 and 1980, and they're going to do it again. So they're not in any hurry for any kind of negotiation. In the meantime, they're rebuilding their missiles and their drones, and we are running out of our own munitions.
Yeah. I saw an interview. You see a lot of retired military who are free to pretty much speak their mind.
Sure.
But there was an interview, and this guy is currently still serving. And I don't think he realized just how badly this came off. But what he said was basically, it's like a new form of warfare, this drone warfare. And we don't have as many drones. And we haven't practiced. And he was like, we're behind. We're behind when it comes to this new drone warfare. That's not what you want to hear, man.
No, and ironically, it's the Ukrainians who have been kind of showing us what to do because, they are battle tested and they've had to respond in real time to a Russian onslaught. And how are we rewarding them? By, cutting off the Patriot missiles and reneging on a deal that the Ukrainians thought we had last month to restore some of that, to license our, Patriot anti-missile technology. We're basically backtracking on that. We are in a different time, and our multi-million-dollar anti-aircraft and anti-drone missiles, are just ineffective, and they cost too much. I mean, we're blowing these huge missiles off on drones, and it's sort of diminishing returns. So, and that's been confirmed. I mean, the White House and Hegseth have denied this, but it seems to be confirmed by all kinds of military sources, including the Military Times and Stars and Stripes and other military publications.
There were reports a while ago that Iran was telling anybody who would listen that they have no desire to sign any kind of a memorandum of understanding or peace deal or ceasefire or any of that till after the midterms. And then recently, just in the last couple of days, I've been reading that now the word is, maybe they won't make a deal till 2029, till the new president is in office. I can believe that they're not going to do anything till the midterms. But, they are suffering. Their people are suffering economically. I can't see them holding out till 2029. But, I don't know. They're pretty tough. What do you think?
I think that they are suffering. I think that the U.S. blockade is going to have an impact. But on the other hand, the Iranian regime hasn't cared much about the welfare of its people. And I think, the Revolutionary Guard is probably well fed and well supplied. And, it's not a democracy where they have to worry about midterms. So I think that they can have time on their side. And, famously back in the missile crisis, the hostage crisis, rather, in 79 and 80, they humiliated Jimmy Carter and made a deal with Ronald Reagan when the hostages came home, after the inauguration. So, I think that our experience with them is that they're strategic thinkers, and that they're a strong, they're not a superpower, but they have a military forces of around 1 million. They endured an 8-year war with Iraq. So they're used to war, and they have tremendous geographical advantages. So bombing the hell out of them didn't work in the first few days, and it looks like we don't have the munitions to keep it up.
Well, I don't know if I agree that we don't have enough munitions, because you may have heard Donald Trump said he's going to, if there isn't a deal, he's going to bomb the hell out of Oman, because when there's no deal, you attack the mediators. Don't you think isn't that like a tried and true strategy? Attack the mediators, kill the mediators, and then they'll see.
And Oman, which has been a loyal friend to the United States in the Gulf for many decades. And this kind of goes to, you talked earlier about, this kind of ties into what's happening with Korea. I mean, the president obviously humiliated because of the stalemate, to put it, I would say, mildly, in Iran. He's now punishing South Korea with this ridiculous decision to substantially reduce American military participation in the annual war games that go on and have gone on since 1976 with South Korea, because he was upset that the South Koreans wouldn't join the war several months after he started it. But the things, I mean, I know you read his post about his friendship with Kim Jong-un, and that he didn't want to do anything basically to upset Kim Jong-un, which is, on one hand, it's just a crazy social media post. But on the other hand, I mean, it's really got big strategic implications. I was watching a professor in Tokyo today who had been just reading the papers in Japan and South Korea out loud on a YouTube. And the reaction from the leaders in Japan and South Korea, while publicly muted, behind the scenes, they're really freaked out about this because they consider it a big change in the U.S. strategic plan for Asia. Basically, that we seem to be, turning tide from Asia. I mean, we sent our last aircraft carrier out of Asia to replace, the Abraham Lincoln, which is, needs replacing in the Middle East.
there doesn't seem to be anything, whether it's a small thing or whether it's a large thing. It's almost like Donald Trump has a gift of always doing the wrong thing. It just staggers me sometimes. You'd think just by the law of averages, once in a while he would do something good, but it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me. And he really seems to be floundering.
He does. And what really struck me about this latest fascination with Kim Jong-un, a couple of things. One is the irony of here is the most badass communist left in the world, Kim Jong-un, right? The communist dictator of North Korea, and this is the president who's going around calling Democrats communists, and yet he is saying his buddy is this tyrant who tortures his own people, and by the way, has nuclear-armed missiles pointed at United States and South Korean forces right now. I mean, we have 26,000 American troops in Korea, and North Korea is pointing right now nuclear-armed missiles at those troops. And this is the guy that the president of the United States is buddying up to. I mean, President Bush famously called North Korea part of the axis of evil. And if I were writing an imaginary headline today, it would be something like U.S. president sides with axis of evil. It's that crazy.
Well, you must feel pretty reassured, though, knowing that Jared is in Israel talking to Netanyahu. Don't you think that will pretty much solve the problems in Gaza? I mean, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah. Well, remember the rendering that the president put up in the White House briefing room of the resort development?
There was an AI video I saw. God.
Of the resort that they were going to build in Gaza, and I guess the resort that Jared and Ivanka are planning for Albania isn't going over too well either, because the Albanians have figured out that the land was fraudulently sold by members of the Albanian mafia. So that project seems to be stalled as well. But we go.
Well, maybe that's why, because Albania is stalled. So he said to his father-in-law, "Let me go to Jerusalem, and I will come away with a deal for Gaza that will satisfy everyone, because I have such a great track record."
Yeah. Oh man. It's the idea that two real estate guys, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, are going to solve these intractable, decades, centuries-old conflicts because they, have an understanding of New York real estate is really something else.
Yeah. And remember the beginning of, I believe it was this term, though it seems like it's ancient history because it's so long ago. Remember when Steve Witkoff was sent to Russia and he basically believed everything Putin said, and afterwards he was like, "Oh God, this is going to be great. We're going to have great relations. Don't worry. He's going to do whatever you want. The guy loves you. It's cool." Yeah, that turned out okay.
Well, and now his son is getting rich with the Trump family crypto venture. Witkoff's son is one of the main investors in Trump Liberty World. And, the comptroller of the currency just last week gave preliminary approval for this crypto venture to be certified as a federally sanctioned bank in the United States. And its assets are entirely made up of crypto currencies that are absolutely untraceable. So here, it hasn't passed yet, but it seems like it is going to be finally approved. So the Trump family, which owns, I believe it's just shy of 40% of this, all the money going into it is not going to be traceable. The Trumps will know who's, making the big contributions, but we as Americans won't know. So, you can just sort of imagine the opportunities for influence buying and peddling, et cetera.
Chris, I want to talk to you more about this. I read about this, and I don't understand it. We need to take a break. Donald Trump has something going on with crypto, which, I don't really get. And somehow that crypto is going to turn into a bank. I don't know how that magic happens. And I don't know what the bank will do or what it means or anything. I find it all very, very confusing. And I would like to have you go over this with me when we come back. And I want you to use words of one syllable and explain to this person who doesn't understand basically any part of this story, except that it is another way that the Trump family is corrupt. I also want to remind those of you who still have your dialing fingers handy, Chris and I are going to be reading texts and, if you like, taking calls for the rest of the day. 773-763-9278. Chris Bury and I will be right back after a break.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
I'm speaking with longtime network newsman Chris Bury. He said a story that's been in the news, which has to do with Trump something crypto, something bank, something else. And that's about to the extent of my understanding. Mr. Bury, again, when at all possible, use words of one syllable and explain to me what's going on.
So we have this federal office called the Comptroller of the Currency, and they basically decide whether a prospective bank should get a federal charter, which allows it to operate. So last week, on Friday, Trump's own appointed Comptroller of the Currency conditionally approved a federal trust charter for a bank, and it's going to be for something called World Liberty. What is World Liberty? That is a crypto venture in which Trump and his family hold a massive financial stake. According to what I've read, the Trump family owns 38% of this holding company. Last year, Trump, just himself, not his kids, disclosed $600 million in income from this venture, right? And that's just part of the $1.5 billion he reported in crypto earnings. So what's the problem with this? The problem is that as of now, we have no federal regulation of crypto assets. What goes in, what goes out, where they're being stored. So this invites, according to people who have studied it, massive corruption because we're not going to know what foreign governments, let's say, are pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into this bank. So it's a little scary. Senator Elizabeth Warren looked at it and she said, quote, "This is the most brazen act of self-dealing our financial system has ever seen," end quote. And
so this bank, will it be like a regular bank? Like, could I go to the crypto bank and get a loan to buy a house?
No, only if you put crypto in. Right now, it's not approved to take normal dollar deposits. Whether that can change, is probably not known at this point. But right now, it's only going to be crypto. But still, we are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. As people have pointed out, the Trump family can take the crypto in, sell it, and put it in a bank account or buy treasury bonds with it and earn 4% a year. So it's basically free money. And we don't know anything about it. So it's completely in the dark. The Crew, the nonprofit good government website or organization nonprofit in Washington, took a look at it and pretty much echoed what Senator Warren said. And they said it's the most egregious example ever of Trump's businesses profiting from his government job. So I know this gets really eye-glazing for people, and they hear the word corruption, they're like, "Oh, I get it, I get it, I get it," and it's boring. It can be boring, but it's so damn important because we've just never seen anything like this. And this goes, some things are pretty easy to get, like the Qatari jet. Okay, he gets a $400 million jet. We can see that. The ballroom, right? We see that. This other stuff, though, is much more insidious and much more valuable to the Trump family, and we're really pretty much in the dark.
This is, I was going to say something really obvious, like the corruption in this administration is just over the top. But one of the things that really galls me about this is they're not even pretending anymore. They're not trying to fool us that all of this stuff is legal and right. They're just being so brazen about it.
And we really don't have the laws for it because we've never anticipated that the president would be a crook. We haven't. So there are no real federal laws against a conflict of interest for the president. We just don't have them. And of course, add to that the Supreme Court decision that gave Trump immunity for any, quote, official act. And it becomes, I think, really hard for anyone to prosecute this in coming years. So they're very well aware of this loophole, that they're protected by the Supreme Court, number one, and number two, that there really aren't many laws on the books that prevent this kind of thing.
Well, John Roberts argued that it wasn't immunity across the board. It was a limited immunity pertaining only to the things that have to do with his job as president. Creating a crypto bank, I don't know, call me crazy, but I think that could be an exception to the rule.
Well, except the controller of the currency is the agency that approved it. So I think they would argue, well, we're just ordinary business folks. We applied like everybody else. And the controller of the currency, who, oh, by the way, happens to be appointed by Trump, approved it. So, we're legal. We're good as gold. And I think that, that's what the Supreme Court didn't anticipate, is that they can wrap all kinds of, what you could argue is dirty stuff inside, quote, the official act. Yeah. I always go back to Blagojevich whenever I think about the Supreme Court decision. Blagojevich was doing an official act, right? He was appointing a U.S. senator to fill the seat of Barack Obama, who was leaving. That's an official act. But he was taking bribes to do it, or soliciting bribes to do it. And, if he were president, would that be okay because it's an official act? That's where I think the Supreme Court decision gets really, really troubling.
One of the things that I find, I guess I would use the word ironic about all this, is Donald Trump's health is so demonstrably awful that it seems pretty evident that he may not, I don't think he'll finish out this term. And all the money that he scammed, it's not even like he can, leave the White House and live the life of the Bezos couples. I mean, he's never even going to enjoy it. Is it just like a game he needs to win? He needs to win more money than anybody ever has before because he's the bestest?
I think that would probably take a panel of psychiatrists to figure that one out. But yeah, it seems to be that if he can get away with it, he's going to do it. I mean, his whole career is one of bending the rules. It's a reason he's been sued so many times. It's a reason that he was found guilty on 34 counts in a New York State courtroom. But now he has these new protections that he never had during his first term. So, and as you said in the last hour, there's nobody to tell him no.
Oh, Todd Blanche made a speech a couple days ago to the DOJ, and he said that he was going to lead the DOJ with integrity. Integrity, Chris.
And then he was also asked on one of the Sunday shows if, he would pledge to be independent from the president. And he said, basically, absolutely not.
Yeah. And he doesn't find that to be at all awkward, that in his world, those two things make perfect sense. Apparently, he's also going to find ways to try to get whatever Trump wants done. He's most recently, I saw where he's trying to sort of go around Congress or say that congressional approval isn't needed for the ballroom. It's a little unclear. But basically, it's Trump wants a ballroom, and I'm going to take whatever legal stand I have to tell you why he can get what he wants.
That's going to be fascinating to watch because the district court has ordered a pause to the ballroom, and it's certainly going to be headed to the Supreme Court. So I want to see that. But just quickly, while we're on the subject of corruption, the other one that just, and I know you talked about this one, is that if you sign up for a super duper account on Truth Social and pay up to $100,000 a month, you get the first tweets or posts from Truth Social about things that could make you richer or poorer. That's amazing to me.
I thought it was $100,000 a year, and I thought it was jaw-dropping. This is basic, again, the corruption. He's not trying to hide it. This is insider trading. You want to get access to my posts because they'll affect the market and they'll probably affect your company. So you better pay me this essentially blackmail. Oh.
Yeah, let's say you're a stock trader and seconds or minutes ahead of everybody else that Trump is going to announce a new tariff on, Canada, pick your country. And so you make a bet based on that. And then, 5 minutes later, you've made your money. And now the rest of the world knows about that. Talk about pay to play. I mean, that's exactly what it is. You are paying to get inside information on government decisions that can move the markets. And according to the New Yorker, the fee for this is up to $100,000 a month.
I used to think that insider trading was illegal. But apparently, without me seeing where those laws were repealed, they were repealed. So, yeah. Insider trading.
This one hasn't been, I know their lawsuits are just starting out. And so, all of this stuff is going to wind up in court. In the meantime, they're going to be making millions and millions more dollars from this, in addition to the new crypto bank. So it's such a tough subject. I know people just hear it and they just go to sleep because it seems dull. But I think, in a couple of years, we're going to look back when the truth comes out and we're just going to be just blown away by the corruption that we've seen.
Yeah. And I think we know certain things, seemingly a lot of things that are happening. How much do you think is happening that we don't know about yet, that there hasn't been reporting about, that they have been able to accomplish under the table? Chris Beery and I are going to take a break. I want to read this text, though. You're correct. It's never enough. This is a greed addiction. Some folks are addicted to more. It's so sad for all concerned because there truly is no end, no enough. If he blasted everyone and everything off the face of the earth, he would still feel the hole in his soul, parentheses, if he has one. Chris Beery and I are going to be right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm speaking with longtime network newsman Chris Beery. We are keeping the phone lines open and the text lines open. Let's go to the phone lines. Jim is on the line. Hey, Jim, you're on with me and Chris Beery.
Chris, I'm a little disappointed. I thought I was going to get a toaster with my first deposit to the crypto bank. It looks like it's in jeopardy. But the reason I called is he's interfering in the vaccination regime, with measles going through the ceiling. And then this persecution of Dr. Fauci is really bizarre to me, because do the Republicans really feel they could pin the tail on the donkey and pin the whole COVID insanity on one man, on Dr. Fauci? And Dr. Fauci's paid a lot of money for security for his family. You got to remember that, because this day and age, they can get your address, your license plate number. They know where you're going. They know if you're going to the 7-Eleven to get a cup of coffee. I mean, this is an 85-year-old doctor. What is their fascination with them? And when measles going through the ceiling, why would he come out with that crazy order? You know, except to probably pay back Kennedy for, you know, railing about it for years. Anyway, thanks for taking my call, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jim. And you know, the right does have an unhealthy fascination with Dr. Fauci, but no one more so than Rand Paul. Why on earth does Rand Paul have such a burr under his saddle about Fauci? Chris, do you have any insight into that?
Well, Rand Paul believes that the National Institutes of Health under Dr. Fauci contributed to what's called this gain of function research. That is, if you mess around with viruses in order to kind of figure out how to fight them, that it can create unintended consequences. And some of the money went to some of the labs in China. Now, we don't know, because there's never been a scientific study that I've ever seen or has been published that definitively pinpoints the lab leak, right? Mm-hmm. But Rand Paul is out on this limb saying that, well, Fauci approved this NIH grant to the lab in Wuhan, and maybe the virus escaped from the lab, so therefore Dr. Fauci is evil and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, Fauci appeared before Congress more than 200 times. He answered all of these questions from Senator Paul about gain of function research, but Paul has got this bit in his teeth and he won't let go. And now he's sort of jumping ahead to make a criminal out of a man who has served the country for decades.
How on earth did they get a hold of what I gather was Fauci's diary?
Yeah, that's a great question. From what I've read, it came from, I guess Kennedy got it, because it was on a government computer that Fauci was actually typing his notes in his office on a government computer. And when RFK Jr. became Secretary of Health and Human Services, he must have ordered somebody to, you know, look through Fauci's work on the government computer, and that's where the diary emerged.
And I thought that was so cheap. I don't think, you know, if they were trying to do that and read that to embarrass him, I don't know. I think that people were really turned off by that.
Yeah, I think so too. And from people who have really gone over the diary, it pretty much comports with his public statements. There are no real smoking guns in there. I mean, the worst that you could say, I think, about Fauci, and this is anybody with 20/20 hindsight, is that Fauci maybe appeared a little bit more confident about where the virus originated than he knew at the time. That's the only thing that I've seen that remotely is critical of him, right? And he was a public health official. The evidence at the time suggested it was the origin was natural from a bat, and so that's what he communicated. Is there now a scientific debate about the origin? Yes, there is. Has that been settled? No, it hasn't. But it doesn't make a scientist a criminal. That's how science works.
And what I thought was particularly sad was, you know, they took parts of his notes his diary to embarrass him. Like, oh, he really loved the attention. Because I remember there was one page where he talked about several interviews that he'd given and how he thought, I don't know, whether it was with the BBC, there was one interview he gave that he thought was really cool. And it was like, oh, look at him. Look at all he cares about is, being some sort of a public hero. That he doesn't really, clearly he doesn't care because he was so excited that he gave this interview. And I thought, oh my God, heaven help us.
Well, if that's all they have on him, I don't think it's much. I mean, I guess there was something else in there about one of the parties that he went to, and it was an A-list party with, Washington celebrities and journalists and so on. So is he maybe a little guilty of being starstruck? Well, you can't slap handcuffs on him for that. So, yeah, that seems to be the worst of what they were able to find. But from what I understand, he had to take the Fifth Amendment because his lawyers were worried that in this era where the Trump administration is prosecuting people for everything, that he would be vulnerable for something that could be construed as perjury. So even though he had testified more than 200 times previously, I think probably against what he wanted to do, his lawyers advised him not to speak. And, was it a good look for Fauci? I don't think it was a good look for Fauci. Was it legally the right thing to do? Probably.
Well, if I were being called in front of that panel by Rand Paul, who I feel was abnormally obsessed with him, I mean, it was kind of almost the only thing Fauci could do to fight back. And the irony is, how many times has Trump pled the Fifth? And we've got Jim Jordan, who still won't respond to subpoenas. And yet the fact that Rand Paul now wants Fauci criminally investigated because he took the Fifth, it just doesn't stop.
Yeah, well, hypocrisy stopped being a concern to most politicians in Washington a long time ago. Hypocrisy just doesn't shame them anymore. But yeah, I mean, if you go back to the corruption we were talking about, and Hunter Biden was obviously raked through the coals. His own father, had a special prosecutor appointed, and you can make a really good argument that Hunter Biden should never have been on the board of a Ukrainian energy company while his father was vice president.
You could also make the argument that I believe it was Marjorie Taylor Greene who showed a full frontal nude poster in Congress. That should be something that we should never have had to deal with.
Absolutely. So, but, one thing doesn't excuse the other. And where is, the chairman, James Comer, who investigated Hunter Biden so relentlessly? Has there been one hearing about these crypto ventures, one hearing about the defense contracts that have gone to Eric and Don Jr.? No, of course not, because it comes down to the what we just discussed. It's hypocrisy.
Real quick, I think we have time before we have to break for the news. There have been reports that the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, resigned because she was left on the decoy plane when Trump got into the catering container to leave Air Force One and be transferred to a military jet. And apparently Caroline Leavitt, who, as you know, just had her second kid, was left on the plane that at least Trump believed had every chance of being shot out of the sky. I don't know if you read the Wall Street Journal. They did when Caroline's leaving. Chris, there were two reporters whose name was on this. It was a lengthy press release that could have been, maybe was, written by Caroline Leavitt herself, glowing. Oh, my God, she did this. She came up through the ranks. And of course, she told both Susie Wiles and Donald Trump like a week or two ago that she wanted to spend more time with her family. And so they knew this was coming, as opposed to the reports that have come out that said Trump was absolutely gobsmacked. He didn't see it coming. He didn't know it was going to happen. And surprisingly, it happened right after she was left on the decoy plane. Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, that is a coincidence worth examining. There was a great photo, taken on Marine One, the helicopter, shortly after they got back to Washington, in which Caroline Leavitt is not looking very happy at all. And she, according to the caption, she was engaged in a vigorous discussion with Trump. Do we know? I don't think we know for sure, but you can connect the dots and see that she probably was not terribly happy that she was left on the decoy plane and not on the jet that went to the UK from Turkey.
Well, one of the things that sort of puts the lie to that I've decided to take more time for my family. There are reports that when it came time for her to deliver, the White House gave her permission to stay off work for a month. They were like, take a month. And she told them, no, I will be back in 10 days. 10 days after giving birth, she wanted to be back there. So is this a woman who suddenly wakes up, a few weeks later and says, you know what? Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should spend more time with these kids, especially since Donald Trump is willing to let me die. I don't know.
Yeah, that's, I think we can all look at this, and even without knowing every fact, it doesn't quite pass the smell test. There was no indication that Caroline Leavitt, I mean, if just being practical, if you just had your baby and you have made a decision to leave, when are you going to do that? You're going to do that right after you've had your baby, not after you've had your baby.
Right.
And then
You're not going to go back. You're going to say, oh, my God, I love this. I like being home. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So, it doesn't add up. And there's some dynamics there, which I think are going to be quite delicious when they emerge.
Well, we have to take a break for news, but one thing before we let this topic go that I want to talk to you on the other side is a lot of journalists were furious that they had also been left to potentially die. And they complained to the White House Correspondents Association, which sent a letter to the White House that I thought was embarrassing. I want to talk with Chris Bury about that when we come right back after the news.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Chris Bury, network news guy, and I are going to get back to solving the world's problems, but we're going to take a little break. We are going to be chatting with Congressman Mike Quigley for a few minutes. Mike, welcome to the show.
Good to be back. Thank you.
It was good to have you here. Okay, let's start with Iran. Is it true that we may bomb Oman because Trump's mad at them because they haven't sealed the deal? I mean, seriously?
Yeah, this is as bad as it gets. We have a president desperate, lost, seemingly spiraling incoherently, and honestly, I don't know where his checks are. I don't know who the adult in the room is that prevents something really, really bad from happening. This war is horrible enough. Yeah, it's not just this idle threat, perhaps, of bombing Oman, but it's also just earlier we read that he's now saying nice things about North Korea, reducing assistance and involvement with South Korea, seemingly forgetting that North Korea's missiles are aimed to the south and trying to aim toward us. And he is now in a conflict that his ego won't let him get out of. At this point in time, we have no reason to understand why we are there. Is this just about the strait? Because remember, the strait was open when he started the war. This was about freeing the Iranian people, as he said on the night it began? Not so much. Is it about getting a nuclear deal? Not so much. At this point, when you look at the proposal that came before, Obama's JCPOA would be a huge victory.
Oh, my God.
Congressman, getting back...
He withdrew from.
Congressman, getting back to what you just mentioned about Korea, you're talking about the social media post on Sunday in which he said that the military exercises that he was going to substantially reduce, they were supposed to start today. He said that they cost too much money and send a signal that is inappropriate and hostile to North Korea, which has been unthreatening and respectful. From what I understand, this is causing a major concern in Tokyo and in Seoul because the United States readiness is the cornerstone of security in the Pacific. And now we have the President of the United States openly siding with the dictator of North Korea while also shipping our last aircraft carrier from the Pacific to the Middle East. What does this do to our stability in the region?
It's part of a larger picture and a larger problem. When the president chose sides with another dictator, Russia, over Zelensky and Ukraine, it gave you some hint of where we were. Never mind the relationship with Hungary and its now former head. It's a series of behaviors that are very concerning that go beyond just that. I think we underestimate when we tell NATO we don't like them anymore, we don't need them, we may not help them. When we threaten Greenland, when we tariff our friends, and we are not the welcomer to the world, when we cut USAID and other aid programs that help countries throughout the world, you stand alone. I was, quoting Emerson when I said before in foreign policy that have a friend, you need to be one. Yeah. But right now, I'm not sure we have any. We're in great conflict with Canada and Mexico. And if I was forced to answer that, who was, it probably would have been Netanyahu in Israel, but that's not the case anymore. However anybody feels about Israel at this point, the main concern is no one likes us. They certainly don't trust us. And our readiness is hurt for a bunch of reasons, not just that we're leaving the region and showing a lack of concern for everyone, but our missile defense system is seriously depleted. This war has cost $90 billion at least so far. It's cost the economy around $150. It's going to add to our debt and deficit. So our military readiness will be down. We could do this the whole time. Appointing inexperienced, inappropriate people to high levels in the military and the intelligence community, people are going to trust us less. They will share less information, and we'll be in a far more precarious situation for all of these reasons.
I thought it was, unless there was a secret reason for convening the cabinet at Camp David, I thought that was absurd. He has surrounded himself with people who are inexperienced, people who are, let's put it, they're idiots. He has surrounded himself with idiots and toadies. So he's going to gather them all together so they can tell him how to get out of Iran? Come on. How about somebody like some of those career diplomats from the State Department that you fired? Any of those we could maybe bring back? I don't know. It's just, how does he expect to get good advice when he's surrounded by people he put in place because of their lack of expertise?
The lack of expertise and their sycophants, and the people you put in charge of the intel community, with maybe one exception, they're sycophants with inexperience. They make horrible mistakes like Signalgate, and it sends a message to the rest of the world. They're not going to trust us with the most sensitive information because that puts them at risk. So now we're in a far worse situation because of all that. And clearly, when the president treats the war in Ukraine as a moral equivalency, sees our readiness fall in the manner that it has, costs to our economy, they sense this. They sense this weakness. And for Putin understands one thing, and that's strength. And at this point in time, that strength from Trump hasn't been directed at all toward helping Ukraine. This sets up a picture where, when you contrast it with first Trump term, General Mattis, he was seen as a pretty far-right extreme. But he pushed back on Trump. Mad Dog Mattis, but he pushed back on Trump. He said things like, if you cut our aid, foreign aid to other countries, you better buy me more bullets. Mm-hmm. But most of his top military folks, with a few exceptions, pushed back when it was time. I don't know who does that, and it's really scary at this point. And I would say this, in the first Trump administration, the briefings I got on the Intel committee at least continued. I felt like we got most of what we needed. I trusted most of it. Gina Haspel hung on there as CIA director, and she was experienced in quality. She wanted to quit, but they begged her not to for reasons we now witness, that if she would have left, someone crazy would go in. So it's an overall frightening picture. And I don't believe, and I've been in my 10th year on the committee where you're supposed to get briefed on everything. This is the first time I feel like I'm in the dark about critical issues. So
that's not good to hear, Congressman. And since you are on the Intelligence Committee and you have been for 10 years, I want to ask you about something we were discussing earlier, which is last week the comptroller of the currency gave preliminary approval for the Trump family to basically run a bank, a crypto bank. And we already know that some of the investors are from, for example, the United Arab Emirates royal family gave $500 million. As someone who sits on the Intelligence Committee, what is your concern about the crypto money that is going to be going into a bank which is largely controlled either by the Trump family or their close friends, such as the Witkoffs?
Yeah, I mean, all bets are off, and now is when we really earn our money. It's bringing us to the public's attention, learning what we can, and talking about the very real dangers. And policy issues and scares like this typically have political solutions, but the role is on us with our voice and our vote to pressure our colleagues to do the right thing. You know, the lesson we learned from Putin and from Hungary and for other leaders, tyrants in the world, is it is very possible for someone to get elected in a democracy, legally elected, and then turn the tools of democracy against itself to bring it down. So this is all part of that. And the fact is, we got an election that I think we would win if it was fair and square. That's a story for another time. But we are all going to have to be as involved as possible. Everything's on the table now. Our fragile little experiment in democracy, our economy is at risk, because I am concerned that our stock market, for example, hasn't caught up with the reality of the situation, that the strait is not open, and that's going to make everything more expensive. The maritime routes beyond that are at risk because of the Houthis and other issues. So I think we're in a time when the economy could pretty dramatically falter, and we have a president who would be going in the opposite direction. Because as you know, he campaigned on ending inflation and no more forever wars. He has no way out of this war other than a one I don't think his ego will let him do. So I voted 5 times now to end this war. When we get back, my Republican colleagues have to go beyond a handful of them stepping up. Their country is at risk. That's more important than the retribution they would get from this untendered president.
Mike, last week, Congressman Jim Himes was giving an interview, and he said that he believes that that speech that Trump gave in prime time, where he was talking about voting interference, he believes that Trump was trying to begin to lay the groundwork so that when the midterm results start coming in, if it looks like Democrats are doing really, really well, if it looks like John Ossoff, who Trump seems to hate, is doing really, really well, that Trump will make some sort of announcement that his administration has gotten word from another country, probably going to be Venezuela, that they admit that they hacked our voting machines and that this is a fraudulent election. And therefore, either the feds are going to try to seize the materials or he will just call the results null and void. If Jim Himes is right, what do we do if that happens?
The lesson here is if a tyrant tells you they're going to do something, you better believe them. At this point in time, he's tipped off bizarrely several times what he has in mind. This is a tool of tyrants. They create a false flag, and he's sort of forewarning that he's going to do that. He's creating the pretense now, so his base, or at least part of the public, understands it in their deluded minds when he actually attempts to do it. So I think we need to gird the local protections, because these are all elections that aren't run by the federal government. They're run by the states.
Exactly.
So I think you're going to see more intimidation. I think you're going to be threats that they'll have the National Guard or worse, ICE at these locations. And I think, I serve with Jim Himes on the committee. He's the ranking member. I think we use our voice and our vote, and we've got to pressure the Republicans to recognize that this is a threat to their democracy, too. Occasionally, we have seen a handful of them step up. But the references I'm glad you brought it up, because in that primetime speech, the references that he was talking about, this intelligence, was raw intelligence, uninvestigated, often incorrect, taken out of context. I believe I have seen everything unredacted that he released redacted. Now, if there's any truth to it, and he said he was unclassified, he would have released it and it would have been unredacted. So this is fast and loose with the truth, and the truth's really important. Again, I believe I have seen everything that he referenced in that primetime speech that Ranking Member Himes talked about, and there is nothing there. So Putin creates false flags. Tyrants create this. They create some pretext for doing something illegal. That's exactly what he's setting up, because at this point in time, they know they're probably going to get their ass kicked despite the gerrymandering they did.
One can only hope,
go tomorrow.
Mike.
That's right. We'll be ready.
I know you've got to run. I know you're on a hard off, but before I let you go, Dave from Hoffman Estates, who's a regular listener, wants me to ask you if you will be one of the co-sponsors of HR 4901 that would award a gold medal to a group of World War II nurses. So there, I have done my duty.
Absolutely. Long overdue.
Thanks. Congressman Mike Quigley, I know you've got to go. We appreciate you being here. We are going to take a break, and Chris and I will be back after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Chris Bury and I are back. And before we went to news, we talked about how Caroline Leavitt very suddenly quit being the White House press spokesperson. There is a lot of reporting that alleges that she did it because Trump left her on the decoy Air Force One that at least he believed had a decent chance of being shot out of the sky. And a lot of journalists who were on that plane were really angry, and they got in touch with the White House Press Association, and they were like, you gotta reach out to the White House. And the organization that represents the White House Press Corps wrote a letter to the White House, but the letter really didn't say, oh, by the way, you put everybody's life at risk, and that sucks, and don't ever do that again. It was like the letter was framed like, oh, well, it's really important for a journalist to always be with the president because what the president does needs to be recorded. And this denied a journalist an opportunity to be with the president. And I thought that was the lamest response possible to that. And now some people are arguing that the White House Press Association did it because they didn't want to offend the Trump administration. They didn't want to put any of their press corps in hot water. But I still thought it was incredibly cowardly. What do you think, Chris?
It seemed lame, but this is the organization that invited President Trump to be their keynote speaker at the White House Correspondents Association dinner after he had belittled numerous reporters and called the media the enemy of the people multiple times. So, I think we need to step back a little bit on this whole episode. And it's really interesting that the whole thing started when the president was supposed to take his new Air Force One, his $400 million gift from Qatar, and, they find out that it doesn't have the defensive capabilities of the real Air Force One. So they make up a phony story about flying the Qatari plane to an Air Force base in Britain so that, the Air Force families can look at it, which was total BS. In the meantime, they fly over the old Air Force One to Ankara, Turkey, and then they pull off this crazy deception where they stick Trump and a few aides, including Natalie Harp, into this, container truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, they put him on a different plane and don't tell anybody. Yeah, I mean, it not only put reporters at risk. I mean, the Secretary of the Treasury was on that plane, Scott Bessent. So was Marco Rubio. And, who knows what they knew. But the whole thing is just, it shows how the whole communication apparatus is broken.
Yeah. We got a listener who texted in, Chris. A question for Chris. Does he believe the press has adequately covered the Trump administration?
No, but I think that it's been extremely difficult because the president and his staff lie all the time. And the press corps has been decimated by budget cuts and corporate restructurings so that the major news organizations don't have the resources they once did. I do think that most White House reporters are trying to do the best they can day in and day out, but it's an extremely difficult job and challenging because the Trump administration is tries to mislead them. So I do think we're getting the deeper reporting in books from Maggie Haberman and Bob Woodward. Unfortunately, sometimes they keep out their best stuff for their books, but we're learning just incredible detail from these books. And I haven't read the new Maggie Haberman book. I've just finished the Andrew Weissman book. So I don't know if, Joan, if you've started that book or not.
I've started, I've
do
started Regime Change. The problem I have, Chris, is that I get up in the morning, I read everything I can get my hands on. I look at what different politicians are posting on social media. Then I do the show. And then when I go to relax, to pick up Regime Change sort of feels like the day has never ended. And I'm having a real hard time concentrating on it.
But just to jump in again on the Air Force jet. So, and some people have pointed this out. So back in 2000, President Clinton traveled to Pakistan, Islamabad, and they were worried then about a threat against Bill Clinton. So Air Force One lands at Islamabad with all the reporters, and then Clinton shows up in a small, like a Gulfstream. It's still an Air Force jet. But he gets off the plane in full view of the camera, so he's revealing the deception. So they opened up about it right away, number one. And number two, they told the head of the White House Correspondents Association, who back then was Susan Page, who's longtime USA reporter and columnist, they told her that Clinton was not going to be on that plane. So they informed the press corps, which is totally different from what Trump did, which was keep everybody in the dark.
Yeah. Chris Beery and I are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am here with longtime network newsman Chris Beery. We have been covering a number of things. I want to switch over to the election. I want to switch over to this discussion of Democrats and Democratic Socialists and what the Democratic Socialists of America have to say about themselves. Hakeem Jeffries was on the Sunday show with Kristen Welker, and she starts off by playing a clip from Chicago's very own Rahm Emanuel, and then she asks Hakeem Jeffries to react to it. I want to play this and then get your reaction, Chris. Listen to this.
I want to ask you about what is effectively a battle taking place inside the Democratic Party. Longtime Democratic official Rahm Emanuel, who, as you know, is also eyeing a potential run in 2028, recently described Democratic Socialists this way. Take a look.
You know, last weekend in Chicago, the DSA held their convention. You're not Democrats. You're a separate party. I'll see you in November.
Do Democratic Socialists belong in the Democratic Party, Leader Jeffries?
Well, what I can say is that I do not support defunding the police. I do not support open borders. I do not support abolishing the Senate. We're focused on actually solving problems that hardworking American taxpayers want us to solve, which is to lower the high cost of living in a situation where life is far too expensive in this country. That's the Democratic agenda. That's what House Democrats are fighting to achieve.
Do you think, though, that there is room in the Democratic Party under the tent of the Democratic Party for Democratic Socialists? Is it big enough?
Well, listen, I don't support the DSA agenda as has been articulated by the DSA itself. Now, you're going to have individual members who have been elected in Democratic primaries, and if they are elected in the general in November, will be part of the House Democratic Caucus. It's going to be a broad caucus. There will be progressives, there will be New Dems, there will be Blue Dogs. What I'm excited about are the candidates who are running to flip seats in November to deliver us a majority that pushes back against Donald Trump's extremism and moves the country in the right direction. That means us, House Democrats, lowering the high cost of living in areas like groceries and gas and, of course, housing, and fighting to make health care affordable for every single American, while at the same period of time pushing back against the corruption that has been unleashed on the American people and holding the crooks accountable beginning on day one in January of next year.
Okay, Chris, you got Rahm Emanuel, you got Hakeem Jeffries, you got the Democratic Socialists. A lot of stuff to talk about in that sound clip.
What I heard was a lot of Washington speak.
Yeah.
I think it would have been so much easier for Hakeem Jeffries to say, look, we welcome the enthusiasm of our voters, and we welcome our younger voters, and we all care deeply about many of these issues. Without getting into agreeing with specific policies, I want to welcome all the energy because we're going to need it in November. I think something like that would have been so easy to do rather than setting down red lines. And there was no reason for him to list all of the crazy policies that are not going to fly anyway. So I'm not sure what he gained by that. It seemed to me it was a missed opportunity to try to welcome more people into his tent.
You know, a lot of the listeners and people who text in and call in on this show have made it quite clear to me that they are really tired of the old school, the corporate Democrats, the Chuck Schumers of the world, and also, frankly, Hakeem Jeffries as well, for part of the reason that you just pointed out. I mean, how would Bernie Sanders have answered that question? Much more like what you said. Hey, And we would love everybody to be in the Democratic Party. You want to be in the Democratic Party? You're welcome too. I mean, it's he always seems so professorial, so sort of emotionally removed, and I don't think that that's what people want right now.
I think he has to acknowledge the facts of, we're seeing what's happening in elections, beginning, of course, with, Zoran Mamdani in New York City, and that we're seeing a generational divide. We're seeing new economic pressures on many of these voters that the older voters don't face. And we're seeing debates on policy, which are always a healthy thing. I think that, the old guard is going to have to recognize that there's a real conversation going on in their party and that they're probably better off engaging in that conversation instead of trying to, rule people out because they disagree on the specific policy.
Also, too, I'm sure you may have seen, Mary Peltola is running for Senate in Alaska. And apparently, in one of the recordings that she did for a PAC that she's trying to raise money for, Kamala Harris was like, oh, that Mary Peltola, she's great. She's great. She's the kind of Democrat we need to get elected. So, donate to my PAC. And Mary Peltola, which I thought was staggering, came out and said, basically, I don't want you to talk about me or my race. I don't want your endorsement. Basically, just stay away. Whoa.
Yeah, and when you look across the country to this midterm election, you realize how different all these elections are. Yes, New York City elected a very progressive mayor, but we just saw in Wisconsin where the progressive, although it was a very close race, got beaten by the more establishment candidate, probably to the advantage of the Democrats, because it's very unlikely that in Wisconsin, a liberal like Francesca Hong is going to be able to win in a 50-50 purple state. So, I think that all of these, whether it's Alaska or Michigan or Wisconsin, they're all quite different. And I'm not sure that, a national player like Kamala Harris or Hakeem Jeffries is going to be terribly helpful in any of these.
Yeah. Speaking of different districts voting in different kinds of candidates, I have got to share with you this ad that I thought was just almost perfect. James Tellerico is running against Ken Paxton for an open Senate seat in Texas, a seat that's open basically because Trump screwed over John Cornyn, but that's a discussion for another day. Anyway, James Tellerico is the Democrat, and he ran an ad about a time a while back when Ken Paxton stole a guy's $1,000 Mont Blanc pen. Listen to this.
This is Ken Paxton, and this is Ken Paxton stealing someone's $1,000 pen. Here's what happened. The incident happened at the Collin County Courthouse, the same courthouse where Paxton would later be indicted for investment fraud. Paxton walked up to the trays next to the metal detectors, rummaged through them, and came across someone else's expensive Mont Blanc pen. He decided to take it for himself. The pen belonged to Joe Joplin, a local attorney who'd accidentally left it behind. It was a special gift from his wife. When Joe realized it was missing, he contacted courthouse security. This is the footage they pulled. Ken Paxton, on camera, stealing this man's pen. After the police got involved, Joe got his pen back. He could have pressed charges, but he decided against it because Joe's a nice guy. He'd never take someone else's pen. But he also hasn't forgotten who took his.
Hi, I'm Joe Joplin, and I endorse James Tallarico for the United States Senate.
Vote for James Tallarico. He won't steal your pen.
What do you think of that ad?
That's a terrific ad for two reasons. It has the beauty of simplicity. Everybody can understand a stolen pen at an airline security line. And it represents something about his opponent's character. So I think for those reasons, it's a terrific ad. A lot of elections, and this is something that we don't talk about much in the media or even academia, so many elections are won or lost on emotional reasons, and that's why advertising has to hit some kind of emotional chord, and I think this one does.
I absolutely agree with you. I played it, and I thought it wasn't, Ken Paxton, I think, is a pretty reprehensible human being, and there's a lot of negative things that you could say about him. But I think focusing on this, something so small, so digestible, makes the point without losing people or making them feel like they've just been dragged through the weeds. So I thought this was really, really on point. I will tell you, however, when I played this ad and talked about it, I got one texter who was like, "Oh, I saw that video and I don't think he meant to steal the pen. He just reached in and grabbed something at random." Well, I'm so glad that you see the world as a glass half full, and I hope you always continue to see the world that way. But the rest of us saw something a little different.
Yeah, and if you read about, I went back, and this happened in 2013, and I was curious. I think that that's a valid reaction that the listener had. But it turns out that, according to all the news accounts, that Paxton only returned the pen when he was pressed by the deputy sheriffs because he showed up on that footage. There's the old saw about character is doing the right thing when nobody's looking. Mm-hmm. So I thought this was like a good encapsulation.
So what you're saying is that Ken Paxton didn't go home and suddenly say, oh my gosh, silly me, this isn't my pen, and it looks like it's a really expensive one. I better take it back.
Yeah, I mean, if you had gone through a security line and you're picking up your stuff in the little container there, and you pick up a pen and you look at it, and it's a Mont Blanc pen, that's worth at least hundreds of dollars, do you put it in your pocket or do you give it to the TSA guy? And, well, he put it in his pocket. It's pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, one of the things, going back to this whole question of democratic socialists, you made a really good point. Zoran Mamdani was elected because he was what the people of New York City wanted. He fit them, just like AOC fit her people. Would Zoran Mamdani have been as successful if he was running in Montana? Maybe, but probably not. Because the person on the ballot has to reflect the community in a way that is often, I think, hard for consultants or parties to quantify. But, that's why this whole pandemonium of, oh, my God, the Democratic Socialists are here. We're all going to die. I think that is just so ridiculous. Look at Wisconsin. They picked who they wanted. They picked the person they felt could represent them. And I think, I hate to say this, but it's kind of like we have to trust the voters.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time in Wisconsin because a family, and I've been going there for a long time. I started my career in Wisconsin. I follow it pretty closely. And David Crowley, he's going to have a tough time against Tom Tiffany. If you drive around Wisconsin right now, I got to say, you see thousands of Tiffany. This is anecdotal. It's not scientific, but his signs are everywhere. And it kind of reminds me of the Trump signs that I saw in Wisconsin in 2024 and 2016 and 2020 even. Crowley is not a shoo-in to be governor. For one thing, he's a black man in a white state. And that's going to be a challenging factor right off the bat. I think he's going to have a much better chance against Tiffany than Francesca Hong. I think she would have been pretty much easily defeated. But it's not going to be an easy race, and I don't think the race in Michigan is going to be easy either. With
you won with El Sayed?
El Sayed. I mean, he's running right now behind the former Congressman Mike Rogers in a state that Democrats in a normal year would be picking up with Trump's approval ratings as low as they are.
But he's another guy who I think understands what makes an effective political ad. I don't know if you've seen some of his recent ones. there's no point in playing them on the radio because, like, he does one to a Taylor Swift song where he and a bunch of people are dancing their little hearts out. And the closed captioning, took the lyrics for her song and adapted them politically, like, we want Medicare for all, all kinds of stuff like that, but you have to read it. And he's done that a number of times. I loved the ad he did with his grandparents, where they talked about what a great young man he was and how he bought them groceries every week. And also, I thought it was very interesting in that ad. It was very clear that his grandparents were very, very white. So, like, Don't be afraid of me. Yes, I have dark skin and I have a funny name, but look at my grandparents. They're as white as you.
I mean, he is smart and he's a good, aggressive campaigner. He would not have fallen into the same traps as Francesca Hong in Wisconsin. He's certainly more facile. But, Michigan's a tough state, too. I mean, Trump won Michigan, twice. And, it's outside of Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor and, Detroit. It's going to be a tough sled, partly because he does have an Arabic name and partly because he is a proud Muslim. Should that matter? No. Will it matter in reality? I think so.
Yeah. Paul Chavar is gently reminding me that I need to take a break. So Chris Beery and I will be right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am joined by longtime network newsman Chris Beery. Chris, the burning issue that we have yet to get to is the Bears. They gave a news conference. They announced, we're a news conference. We're having a news conference. And the news conference said, we're still looking at Indiana. If anybody else wants to make us an offer, now's the time. It was such a nothing burger. And I don't know if my audience reflects the way a lot of people feel, but my audience is really, really tired of this. Make up your mind, go where you want to go, and just stop talking.
Yeah, I can see that. It's sort of gotten to the point of, okay, poke me when they actually make a decision.
Wake me when it's over.
And it's been sort of silly on, both sides. I mean, the Bears clearly have been, using their leverage to get the best deal from the taxpayers, which I'm sure to a lot of your listeners is like, well, they're billionaires. Do they really need more money from taxpayers? And on the other side, Pritzker has been kind of doing this dance where, we'd like the Bears to stay in Illinois, but we're not going to move heaven and earth to make that happen. Mm-hmm. So there seems to be sort of a lack of enthusiasm among the Illinois policymakers, and for good reason, because they're stewards of the economy. But they're still trying to sort of indicate that the Bears are, still in the Illinois game somehow. I don't know. I just can't see.
I get what you're saying. You're going to make a big change with your business. You want to get the best deal that you can. Okay. And, it's like, oh, you're going to lose me if you don't sweeten the pot. I get that. But do it behind closed doors. Tell us when it's over. We're just regular folks. We're, we don't really have a say in this, except maybe to tell our politicians that we think there's better ways to spend our tax money. But, I hate this. We're having a news conference. We want you to know that Indiana is still on the table. So, last minute, get your bids in.
Yeah, it's a lot of dancing around. At the end of the day, as someone who saw Bears games when I was a kid at Wrigley Field and then at Soldier Field, the idea of that skyline of Hammond, Indiana, with the steel mills and the waste dumps, and after the beautiful opening that they do on the Bears games, where you see the Chicago skyline and the lakefront and everything is glittering and pretty, I don't know. Personally, the idea of seeing a Bears game with the Indiana backdrop somehow seems depressing.
It does. And, I don't know if you know George Bliss. He's a friend of the station. And he had discussions he used to know the Hallis family. He spoke to them. He said it's been a long time, 10 years. But he said even 10 years ago, Indiana was trying to woo them. You can do all your practices at Notre Dame. We'll build you a stadium. It will basically cost you nothing. We've got that Gary Airport nearby, so it won't be a hassle for other teams to get here. And, they made a pretty nice offer. And I don't fault them if they decide to take that pretty nice offer. But, maybe behind the scenes, each time they do this, politicians are coughing up more. But I don't think so. I think that would be reported. I mean, Governor Pritzker has said pretty plainly, we will do for the Bears what we would do for any big company that wanted to relocate in Illinois. And I think that's fair.
I think that's fair. And also, I think it's fair to point out that, the New York Giants play at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And, they still have lots of fans from New York, and life goes on. And television viewers really don't, care much whether the Giants are playing in New York or Rutherford. So, at the end of the day, it probably won't matter all that much. But I will point out that in Washington, D.C., where I lived for a long time, the Washington Commanders are, getting ready to build a stadium back in the city where the old RFK Stadium used to be. And that was great because you could just hop on the metro and take, a quick subway ride there, and it's in the city. And it's sort of sad that we couldn't have figured out a way to keep the Chicago Bears in the city of Chicago on this beautiful lakefront, but I know that ship has sailed.
And I know that everybody always points out that that's what happened. The New York teams play in New Jersey, and they're still called New York. But I don't want them to be the Chicago Bears if they're in Indiana. I'm sorry. I guess that's prickly. I guess maybe that's petty. But you know what? That's me. So there you go. They can't be the Chicago Bears anymore.
Well, that's what His Honor, Richard J. Daley, said. I mean, it came up in a press conference years and years ago about them moving, I think it was to Arlington Heights way back when. And he said, well, then you can't call them the Chicago Bears.
Though Brandon Johnson apparently recently did say that if they moved to Indiana, they'd still be the Chicago Bears. So we'll see. Chris Beery, thank you so much for being here and helping me cover so much ground today. It was delightful.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez is up next. She has two co-hosts today, Sole Santos and Evie Cato. So join her. She will be here as soon as the news is over. Tomorrow, I'm going to welcome back to our airwaves Paul Lisnek, longtime political reporter for WGN. He is now out on his own. And last time he was here, we had a delightful conversation. So he is going to be back with me tomorrow. Okay, have a great evening. Take care of yourselves. I will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Have a wonderful night. See you tomorrow.